Hello, my name is Rand Baldwin. Welcome to the Soaring Café. We're pleased today to have as our guest Frank Paynter, otherwise known as Tango Alpha. Frank, I'm sure, is very familiar to all of you who regularly visit the Soaring Café. Frank's been our roving reporter all over the U.S. He flies in at least a dozen contests per year, so he's just about the most well-versed person probably on the competition scene in terms of the soaring in a diversity of weather and terrain and soaring sites. Those of you who read Soaring Magazine will also recognize Frank as the co-author with Scott Manley of the Condor Corner. Frank has been a Condor expert for years and is a true evangelist for the value of simulated soaring simulation software to help develop one's competition techniques and basic airmanship skills. So Frank, can you tell us a little bit about your background before you got into soaring?
Sure, Rand, and I have to say that that's a heck of an introduction, and I'll try to live up to it. Let's see, before soaring, I was power pilot, and then back in the 70s, when I was young and really stupid, I was a skydiver. So that was an entire lifetime before the soaring aspects of that. Back in the 70s, and I made almost a little over 3,000 skydives, and lived to tell about it. In fact, I was sort of amazed when I got to the age of 30 and I was still alive, and so I had to kind of rethink what I was going to do with the rest of my life after that.
So it's a miracle you're still with us.
It's a miracle we're still with us now. And some people might consider that a curse, but yes, for me it's a miracle.
Great. Well, we're certainly happy that happened.
Good, yeah.
So how did you get into soaring?
I got into soaring because as a power pilot, I like flying. And I found these guys that were towing up gliders, and I wanted to fly the tow plane. I didn't care about the gliders. I just wanted to fly the tow plane. So it was an outfit in Virginia, in Warrenton, Virginia, and they paid the princely sum of 50 cents for a tow if you were a commercial pilot. So I started flying tow, and I called up my wife the first day, and I said, honey, I blew my entire day's wages on lunch at McDonald's. So I made about $2.50 that day or something like that. So that was it. And then when I came out to Ohio to go back to school, I went looking for another tow plane job. I found the Cedar Creek Soaring Society in Waynesville, Ohio, and it turned out that they have a club rule that you must be at least a private pilot glider. You must have a private glider license before you can tow. That was just the way they wanted it at their club. So I got my glider license so I could tow. Didn't care about the gliders. But of course, as everyone knows, as soon as I got my glider license, it was like shooting heroin into my veins, and I became completely addicted, and that was how this all started. I actually started towing first. Got an LS4 and flew the heck out of it, and then eventually got my Ventus, and it's been, just flying as much as I can ever since then.
Well, what is it about competition soaring that appeals to you?
Competition is kind of the peak of the measurement of your soaring ability, and it pits you against other great soaring pilots, and it allows you to measure not only how well you're doing against other glider pilots, but against how you are doing against your own aspirations and your own performance of previous times. And I'm very much about seeing how far I can go in any sport or activity. I want to do the very best I can every time. And competition is a way to measure that kind of improvement. And it really makes great soaring pilots. You really can't do competition if you aren't a great soaring thermaler, and you have to be navigating, you have to be able to use the moving maps and the whole works. And it's just a very challenging and rewarding endeavor. I can't get enough of it. I'd go to 30 contests a year if I could do it, but they don't have 30 contests a year, at least not that I can get to.
Yeah, I wish that were available, and I could do it myself.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
That would be fantastic.
Well, I know there's been a lot of discussion in the U.S. in recent years about the value of team flying. and that's been something that Europeans have been practicing for a long time, and I think their record of wins in world competitions, in part at least, reflects the value of team flying. And I know you've been doing some experiments, so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We didn't do well at the Uvalde WGC, and in part we think that was because of our lack in skills in team flying. So last fall, John Mattel, Bravo Zulu behind us here, and we had met in a previous time to do some Condor flying, and we both had done a fair bit of that, and we decided that we were going to try to see if the Condor simulator would allow us to work on team flying procedures and techniques. So John was very committed to the idea of training, and I had actually asked a number of people if they would be interested in trying this experiment, and John was the guy who said, yes, I'll be happy to do it, and I'll commit my time and effort to it. And so last fall we started flying, and we flew almost every day, at least 2 or 3 times a week. We always flew competitions, and there are hundreds of competitions in Condor land, and so that wasn't hard to do. And we flew as a team. And of course, we were ridiculously incompetent to start with. I mean, we did everything wrong. We couldn't stay together. We would, wind up 5 miles apart 10 minutes after the start, and one of us would land out, and the other would go on, and we'd go backwards and sideways and everything else. But the nice thing about Condor is you can do all of that, and you can make lots of mistakes in a hurry. And so if you have to make 200 mistakes to get good, in real life that might take you 10 years. But in Condor, it only takes you 2 months because you can really compress the time. And so at the end of the season, or at the end of the winter season in Condor, we met for the first time as a team at the seniors, at this last seniors contest. And our first competition day at the seniors was the first the first race day we'd ever had in real life. And the 2 of us looked at each other at the end of the day and says, hey, that was just like Condor. And so it really was, it really worked. And I believe firmly now, as a result of this experiment, that we could take anybody who is really committed to the idea of getting better at soaring, and in one winter, we can make them effective team pilots. Gosh, that's quite fun. And in fact, I think that what John and I will plan to do next winter is we'll probably try and each find another willing student. And at the end of that season, we'll have 2 more experienced team pilots, and then maybe we'll do it again in the following season. So I actually think that within a few years, if we want to do it, we here in the U.S. can produce a crew of experienced and competent team flying pilots, and we can start clawing back toward the top of the standings in the WGCs. And I think we can do it because of Condor.
Wow, that's remarkable. I certainly hope that prediction comes true.
Yeah, me too. Otherwise I'm going to look like a total idiot.
And I'm sure we'll hear more about how things are going in Soaring Café.
Yes.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good. I know you were also one of the principal adherents of the FLARM technology in the U.S. once it became available here. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned and some lessons that you've learned about how FLARM can be helpful in avoiding mid-air collisions?
Sure, Rand. FLARM, has gotten a slow start here in the U.S. And the FLARM people haven't really helped themselves by the slow pace at which it's been introduced. But I believe they really have come on in terms of support now, and they've gotten to the point where it's useful and usable. Last year at the seniors, there was a lot of problems with RF interference. That's all been fixed. The issues of IGC recording, that's really essentially been fixed now. What we saw at the WGC last year and at the seniors this year was that FLARM works. I personally have had half a dozen occasions now of the kind of oh my moments where a glider I got an alarm out of FLARM. I looked up and saw a glider where I did not see one a few seconds before, and where without FLARM I might not be sitting here today. And this has happened to me at least a half a dozen times last year and this year. And if you talk to the FLARM guys, the guys who have FLARM at the seniors, they'll all have stories like this. And so my message to your readers and viewers is FLARM works. I think that if you don't have a FLARM and you want to fly competition, you really ought to get a FLARM. There is a wonderful rental program. I think it's by Soaring in California. If you don't have a FLARM and you want to go to a competition, you can email these guys. They will send you a FLARM in a prepaid shipping package. The thing will cost you $50, completely done. It'll show up with batteries and chargers and the whole works. You send it back to them with a check for $50 and you're completely done. So there's really no excuse if you want to fly competition to not have a FLARM, a portable or a brick. And it is going to save lives. It's already saved me from very, very close calls. And I'm here to tell you it works. I want to see it be mandatory. The SSA has been conservative about that, and I don't blame them a bit for that. But I think that we ought to see it be mandatory in national competitions within a year. And I think it ought to be a mandatory in regionals a year after that. And I think that it's just the way it is. And in Europe, it's completely mandatory. So it's a good thing. If you had any doubts at all about it, put them aside, get out your checkbook, write Soaring and rent one or pay the $1,500. I once told somebody, if you buy a new parachute costs the same as a FLARM. And the only difference is that the parachute has absolutely no function in your cockpit at all. I mean, you put it on at the end, and you get out at the end of the day. It only works after you hit somebody. But FLARM is about the same price, and it will prevent you from using your parachute. And I think that's a good deal.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, thanks so much for your thoughts on that subject. We look forward to hearing more about that and hearing more about your circuit around the country during the contest season.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. And it's been a great pleasure having you as a guest on Soaring Café.
It has been a great pleasure writing for Soaring Café. I love writing. I love the sport. And you guys have built up a wonderful platform for me to blather. And I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And we're certainly happy to have you on our team. This is Rand Baldwin reporting for the Soaring Café.